all the years that I was a wrestling fan, there was only two big men who were my favorites, and only one of those two I was actually able to see wrestle. One was Don Leo Jonathan and Bruiser Brody. Don Leo was a guy I never got to see, so I considered him my favorite magazine wrestler. One of the guys, just what else do you call it? It's just somebody who I liked to read about, somebody who just, captured me right away and sucked me in when I seen the size of him going against Andre the Giant and different guys throughout the 60s and 70s in those issues as a kid. And of course, like I said, Bruiser Brody, without a doubt, one of my favorite big men that I was fortunate enough to actually sit ringside. I wouldn't even say ringside, I would say almost in the ring. I took photos of him with my elbows resting on the ring apron. That's how close we were. There was no guardrails. It was at a racetrack towards the end of Brody's, I shouldn't say career, but maybe towards the end of his life. I'll go through that stuff a little bit later on. I would like to show Bruiser in the magazines. Problem is, there wasn't a whole lot of magazines that he was on. The time of his career, he's one of those people that got popular after he passed away. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying he wasn't popular. It was just something of his legend, really took hold after he passed away, and a lot of more people knew about him after he had died. Kind of like the Misfits punk band. They sold more records when they broke up than they did when they were together. So it was a kind of a thing like that. The more of his legend spread, the more popular the man had gotten. So he wasn't on many magazines. He worked both heel and face. I liked him better as a heel. We're going to cover him a little bit in the United States and some of his Japan tour where he was the most successful. His first magazine, if you want to call it that, was in 1974 on the cover of Wrestling News, an NWA issue. This was an arena magazine. It was there's no actual date on it, but this was when he was tag team champions with Stan Hansen. They were the United States Tri-State Tag Team Champions. This was the same belt that I discussed with Andre the Giant and Dusty Rhodes held. Basically the Bill Watts territory, Mid-South area tag team champions. This was his first title. Him and Stan were a team here, and this is autographed by Stan. And this is a hard one to find, this issue. His first actual magazine cover would be on The Wrestler, January of 1977, and that would be his match against Bruno Sammartino. And he did have a short run in the WWF. Actually, he got his name Brody from Vince McMahon Sr. They changed it. It was Frank Goodish at the time, and he changed it to Brody. He also gave him the nickname of King Kong. I'll talk about that in a sec. So his first actual cover was The Wrestler, 1977, against Bruno Sammartino. This is a program from that event from the Garden. Like I said, I've shown this in a couple of other videos as well. This is a tough program to get. Here's the actual Garden program to the Bruno Sammartino match. Let's go inside it for a sec for anybody who hasn't ever seen it. Bruiser Brody versus Bruno Sammartino. And if you look down at the bottom here, Kevin Sullivan's, one of his first appearances in the Garden is against none other than Jose Gonzalez, also known as the Masked Invader, also known as the dirtbag that knifed him. Here is a picture of Jose Gonzalez as well in the Garden issue. Kind of ironic, huh? Both on the same card, only he's on the undercard and Brody is in the main event. Back of the program is Brody with his manager, the Grand Wiz, and the Executioners are also on the cover when they were managed by the Grand Wiz. They also did a six-man tag. They teamed up with Brody and did a few matches at the Garden as well. Sorry guys, this doesn't belong in here. This is just a NWA Florida program from the Bayfront Center. Dory Funk versus Jack Briscoe just got mixed in with my other programs. Brody's next cover, and it's kind of sucky, I guess, if you're a Brody fan and want to see him on the cover, because the female apartment wrestling dominated the issue. But here he is versus Andre the Giant in a small corner shot. That would have been a great front cover. This is the September 77 issue of Sports Review. Moving up to 1978, this would be Brody's first Japanese cover, and this is an issue of Gong in December 1978. Bruiser Brody comes to Japan. In 79, we are on the cover of Wrestling News, and Brody is on the corner front cover, winning Dick the Bruiser's WWA heavyweight title. And you'll notice here he's going by King Kong Brody now. Reason being that Dick the Bruiser also went by the Bruiser. Said, you know, this town's not big enough for two Bruisers. So they actually made an angle out of it, and winner would get to keep the name. And I guess Bruiser Brody had lost that, but ended up winning the title at some point later on. And in the WWA area, and also the AWA, Brody would go by King Kong. Like I said, that was a name that McMahon had given him at the time in '76 when he was at the Garden. They said, you look like King Kong, and with the big hair and the beard, and real big guy. And at that time, King Kong was just coming out into the theaters in 1976. And there's a picture of Brody standing next to the photo from the poster for King Kong. I'll show you that a little later on at the end. Here is Brody now in 1980, moving up one more year, and he's taking on Harley Race for the NWA World title. By the way, this is the only Wrestling World issue for 1980, just one issue. It was special issue 1980 Wrestling World. I explained in the other videos that Wrestling World, you know, took a big nosedive from like 77 to like 82, putting out one, sometimes just two issues a year. So 1980, they just put out one issue. Here is a 1981 issue of Pro Wrestling Monthly, the deluxe issue, and this is Bruiser winning the NWA World International Heavyweight title. He had beat Dory Funk for that belt, and this is his only cover. You will see him on the cover with a belt. It's the NWA belt, not the greatest looking picture, but let's take a look at a few photos inside. Here is Bruiser with the gold. They never took a good picture of Bruiser. They always took these silly pictures of him making dumb faces and stuff when he was the champ there. It's hard to find him with a good, serious look on his face when he was the champ. Here's a couple at the bottom with him as champ, and him with Dory Funk, him going for the pin. And next page is him defending his title against Bruno Sammartino. And here is a shot. The top and the bottom are of the match from '81 where he defended the NWA International title against Bruno. And here is a black and white photo of Bruno and Bruiser at the Garden back in '76. Here's just, like I said, a nice drop in the knee shot on top of Bruno here. So this was on Bruno's last tour, his farewell tour, his goodbye tour. And in '81, when he did a tour for Baba, this was in All Japan. And of course, you know, Bruno didn't win the belt. Most of you guys are familiar with this particular issue with Bob Backlund on the cover, but what's interesting is the top, the strange reappearance of Superstar Graham. And if we open the magazine inside, and you see We're seeing Superstar for the first time with his new look, and we're wondering, what's this all about? We thought he was dead. He was rumored to be no longer alive or no longer in wrestling, and here he is with a shaved head and the mustache, and he is going up against Bruiser Brody in Houston, Texas. And here's a couple of shots of Brody and Superstar. Brody is here and here. The top and the bottom one are matches from him versus Riki Choshu in All Japan. Show that because here is the program to that match. Houston, Texas, January 3rd, 1982, and it's Bruiser Brody. Inside is the story of Superstar's return. He has a full beard inside, and in the matchup lineup sheet, it announces the co-main event is Brody versus the return of Superstar. Here is another Japanese issue, and it's just talking about Brody's return back to Japan after a short absence in 1983. Also, again, on the cover, in November 1983, Brody and Hansen are back together as a tag team for the first time in about 10 years. And this is them on the cover in All Japan as a destruction tag team. Brody would float back and forth from his 6 to 8 to 10 week tours in Japan and come back to the United States. And here he is on the cover of The Wrestler, July of 1980, and he's facing Ric Flair in St. Louis for the NWA World Title. And Brody would win the NWA World Title. Now, this is just Brody with the belt after the match, holding it up, and the Japanese were always cool with taking certain pictures that weren't necessarily true, and this is one of them. Brody just holding up the 10 pounds of gold after the match. Of course, he didn't win. This issue just basically explains the different competitors that Brody faces throughout the NWA and then also Japan, and nothing really eventful happening in that issue. But it commands a lot of money, that issue, and it's pretty hard to find. I know a lot of people are in search of it, and it is hard to come by. This is a cover of Wrestling Weekly, and this was the March 20th issue of 1984, and it was just a flat-out, bold-faced lie. It says, Bruiser Brody agrees to sign contract to face WWF champion Hulk Hogan in April. Yep, that's what it says. And we all know that never happened. That probably would have been great if it did happen, especially in '84, when the WWF still had a little bit of my respect and most others' respect, and it didn't turn into the circus sideshow that it did from '86, '87 on. So if it did happen with Brody and Hogan, I would have liked to have seen it happen right here at this point. That would have been great for a Mania 2, or even 1 for that matter. And this is just another, I don't know if you want to call it a propaganda issue, but it's just an issue that that didn't happen. They're saying, what if it did happen, Brody versus Hogan? And let's just go inside a second, because there's some fantastic photos in here that they really made this look like they had a match. Here they are, Hogan as the champ, Brody next to him along ringside in the ring, and here it is. Looks like Hogan is delivering a clothesline to Brody. This is a great shot. Here's another one that looks like he's being thrown into the ring ropes. Another one at the bottom where it looks like he's catching a knee strike, and a very believable looking shot of Brody coming off the top rope with a chop to Hogan's head. Very realistic, and if one didn't know, you would think the match happened. But the magazine continues on with different shots of Hogan and Brody and their different opponents throughout Japan, and they're sizing up the match and who would win, who would lose. Brody with Harley, Hogan with Harley on the top, Brody with Andre, and Hogan and Andre in the corner. And here they both are with Abdul the Butcher just comparing tales of the tape and whatnot. There's several more photos in there, but you get the idea. Pretty cool magazine. Also sells for a heck of a lot of money if you can find it. I've seen them for $75. I've seen them for $125. It's bizarre. I wouldn't certainly pay that kind of money for that, but that's what some people pay for them. Some of the biggest news to hit Japan, and it hit like the Beatles were coming to America. Brody jumped ship from All Japan and went to New Japan. And this, what I believe, and this is just my personal thoughts on it, is this is what put him on the path to his death. Probably not the best move for him financially in the long term, going to New Japan. If he stayed loyal with Baba in All Japan, things may have been different. He may even still be there. Who knows? I guess we'll never know. That's just my take on how things wound up for him in the ripple effect. I could be completely wrong. It's just my hunch. But Brody goes to New Japan. It is huge news, and he is going to take on Antonio Inoki and battle for the NWF, soon to be big name IWGP titles. Problem with Brody and Inoki was neither one of them wanted to lose to each other, and somebody had to win, somebody had to lose. New Japan is Inoki's company, and he wants to go over. And Brody, his character, he just doesn't get pinned, and neither one of them wanted to take the first fall out of a 2 out of 3 falls match, and I guess neither one of them trusted each other. So it's kind of bad business. It's kind of bad business for everybody. But that's what, that's what happened. So this was, I just wanted to go back. This is April 11th issue of 1985 of Gong Weekly. The same coverage being announced on April 9th issue of Pro Wrestling Weekly, just in case you people wanted to hunt down these issues. But going back to my feelings on him going with New Japan. What had happened was the Road Warriors were huge, and they were in big demand to come to Japan. The Japanese people went apeshit for the Road Warriors. They ended up going to All Japan, and that's where Brody and Hansen were. The Road Warriors ended up getting the same money that Brody and Hansen were getting. Brody didn't like that idea, and Hansen went with the flow. Brody was kind of boisterous about it, let it be known that he wasn't happy about it. And these are 2 young guys. We've been here. We're main guys. The list of reasons go on. They were making $10,000 a week, and Antonio Inoki offered Brody $14,000 a week. That's a fuckload of a lot of money. $14,000 a week for like a 6-month run. I mean, that's some big money to be made. How could he turn it down, right? So he went for the money, and then when he got there, he realized, he's not going to take the fall, and you're not going to take the fall, and I'm not going to take the, so it was back and forth with who trusted who and who didn't want to get pinned, and ultimately, it wasn't a very good relationship there. This talking too much. This issue would be the hype up for the match, and the match was set to take place, and this was the 85 issue of Gong, and here they are facing off for the first time, and this is the cover of Pro Wrestling Weekly, and Inoki and Brody locking up for the first time in New Japan. And here is Gong's coverage of their first matchup together, and Inoki, Brody in a arm lock. And this feud would go on, I'm not sure exactly, I would say between 5 to 6 months he was there for. And this is a pro wrestling photo album Let me get it down so the camera sees it a little bit better. These photo albums are expensive. There's a number of them. They're bigger than the average magazine. They're thicker and a lot more pages, and these cost quite a bit more money, at least $100 an issue for something like this. It's all about Brody and Inoki's battle throughout the months in New Japan. Here is another issue, Brody and Inoki on the cover, Pro Wrestling Weekly, and the final issue of some hype matches. Just another average magazine. Brody was on so many covers. I'm not going to show them all. I have all of them, but they're just like this. I figured if it's nothing special to point out, why bother showing it? But these are some of the better photos of him on the cover that I'm showing you today. After the war with him and Inoki kind of burned down a little bit towards the end, he teamed up with Jimmy Superfly Snuka, and he was going for the IWGP Tag Team Championship, and they made it to the finals. They came very close to winning the IWGP Championships. They would have been the first team to do so. The titles were brand new at this point, and they ended up losing the finals. I thought they were a great tag team. They had some great matches together. They were both the same. They looked the same, and they both complemented each other perfectly. If you had any chance to get some old video of those two, definitely check it out. They were a great tag team. This would come to an end for Brody's New Japan run. And now, from making $14,000 a week to not doing business properly, I guess, if you want to say that, in New Japan. Now he's going back on the independent circuit. Where do I go from here? You go from $14,000 a week to a half-dead, on its way out last leg AWA with Verne Gagne for a short run. And here he is on the cover in July of 1986. In the AWA, going by King Kong. He is one of Sheik Adnan Al-Kaisi's men, taking on Greg Gagne. What a difference. He would continue on floating around the different independents throughout 86 and 87, and here he is on the cover of Wrestling Scene in a barbed wire match. He would team up with the Von Erichs, or the few that were left there, and take on the Freebirds, and he would have some great battles with Abdul the Butcher. Here is a awesome program, probably one of the best photos I've ever seen of Brody on the cover of a world-class championship wrestling program. Brody reinstated. What an awesome looking cover. That was in 87, and the summer of, or early fall of 87 is when I had a chance to see Bruiser Brody come to my area where I was living at the time, and I was lucky enough to actually meet him. I had his autograph. I had my picture taken with him. Stupid me, I never really took care of the autograph, and I threw away the photo of me and him because I was like 17 years old, and I was going through that like gawky time where I just was, in between, teenage kid, and it was the 80s and clothes were stupid looking and I looked stupid, and I just didn't like the photo of myself. I could kick myself in the ass right now for that, but I did manage to get a couple of good photos of Brody myself with my Kodak disc camera back in 87. So here is Brody. Like I said, I was extremely close. We were literally resting our elbows on the ring apron. Here he is again. I think I took 6 photos of Brody. So these are one of a kind, exclusive to me. Right there. He was supposed to fight Abdullah the Butcher. Abdullah was a no-show, which really sucked, and he ended up wrestling some other guy who I have no idea. So here you are, selling out, in Tokyo, and now you're at a racetrack with like 30 people. So yeah, I would think that was a pretty bad decision to leave the way you did in New Japan and burn the bridge kind of in All Japan. Baba, from what I heard, is a very forgiving guy and decided to give Bruiser another chance. If he came back, he was going to have to do a job, and he was going to have to prove his loyalty, and he was going to have to get beat and like pinned in the middle of the ring beat, and he knew that. So going back, he knew he'd have to do that, and in order to get off the independent circuit and make the money. And this is saying Bruiser Brody signs a deal with New Japan in 1986, which it didn't happen. This is the next issue saying Brody cancels contract and betrays the fans in New Japan and signs with All Japan. So you have to take these with a grain of salt also. He never signed a contract with New Japan again and canceled it and stuff like that. But he did go back to Baba, and he did go back. He won the title very quickly, once again, the NWA International Heavyweight Championship, and then lost it almost immediately to Jumbo Tsuruta with a clean pinfall in the ring. Yep, the few times that Brody was pinned clean in the center of the ring for the belt. So he did the job. He did his whatever it was run there, and he's back on the indie circuit again, and then in hopes to bring him back on another tour where he can make big money again and get him in the main event. But before that happened, before he was able to get back, he made a tour through Puerto Rico. And we all know what happened in Puerto Rico. Here is Bruiser on the cover of Wrestling Scene in Puerto Rico against Carlos Colon. And here he is biting the forehead of Carlos in a very bloody shot. And that would be his last wrestling magazine cover as a living wrestler, sad to say. His last cover is a Wrestling Scene cover in 1988, and the Japanese put out the next issue, which was the death announcement. It says, "Shock, Super Beast." They called him Super Beast for some reason. They nicknamed him that. It says, "Shock, Super Beast, Brody stabbed. Died in Puerto Rico." Inside, it goes on to explain he died at 5 a.m. He was stabbed 3 times, once in the chest and twice in the stomach. The full story of his death is in this issue. It's a great issue. It explains a lot of what happened, a lot of things. Who knows really what happened? You heard a lot of different stories. This is the Japanese Gong's version of what happened and what went down, and it's all in this August 4th, 1988 issue of Gong. All Japan had a memorial benefit show for him, and here is his wife and son in the ring, and this is on the cover of Gong on September 15th, 1988. This whole benefit show was on YouTube a couple of years ago. It might still be. It's a few hours long. All the wrestlers come out, they put roses near his picture, and then they give him the bell salute and all that stuff. You know, it was kind of nice to see what they did for him. And this is the Bruiser Brody memorial issue called Brody Forever, Last of the Super Beast. This is the issue that has his in his coffin, and I opened it once before. I guess I could show you guys a couple of more photos from it. I'll just show a couple because I know we're almost a half hour into it. Here is Bruiser in his casket at his funeral. Very sad to see. I mean, it's probably, like I said before, it doesn't really belong in a wrestling magazine. It's something that should be private for the family. Here is the locker room that the guys were in, that he was in that night. He was killed in the shower, but this is the locker room that he was in that night. There is a shot of the stadium. That is the ambulance where they came in to get him, and this photo here. Here is another funeral shot, him laid out, and some of the wrestlers coming to say goodbye. It was a very small private funeral here, private viewing here. That's his wife, and she's putting her hand her friend is putting her hand up in the face, doesn't want her photo taken. So it was just, some photos like this, and then it goes on to talk about his career. And here is that old photo of him. We didn't see the whole photo. Here he is with cowboy boots and the cowboy hat with the trunks. He doesn't really look very good as a cowboy. He was much better as a wild man. But this entire program is magazine is dedicated to him. Here he is in a cage match, talking about the Lex Luger cage match, where Luger freaked out and he wouldn't sell for him. But the magazine goes on, and it's all about Brody. It's very expensive. The Japanese did a fantastic job putting it out. And there is just my little dedication to my favorite big man. Very sad ending to a guy who could have had a tremendous career later on had he not left us so short. In some ways, I'm so glad that he never got swallowed up by the WWF and got ruined like so many other wrestlers did. Somehow I believe that he wouldn't go for that bullshit. I know he want the money, but I don't think he would do any stupid things like some of the other wrestlers had to sell their souls to do. Here's that poster I was telling you about. Before I forget, this came with that memorial issue, and here he is. If I can get the whole thing in the shot here. Brody with King Kong in 1976 on the billboard sign. Not sure exactly where this, I forget. It's written in one of the pictures in the magazines. George Napolitano took the photo, and obviously, Brody signed it on the bottom of this. Not this, it's just a copy, but there is that big 24 by 36 poster that came with that memorial issue. So if you get the memorial issue, make sure the poster comes with it. It's a two-sided poster. There's a color photo on the back. This is framed, so I'm not going to show you what it looks like. It's just a really cool cover shot of him just in the ring, standing there real close up. Alright guys, this was my video for Bruiser Brody in the magazines and programs. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next.